So there has been yet again another remarkable drama that has been created by, I guess we'll describe it as a kind of philosophical confusion between a more realistic view of the world and a kind of idealistic view of the world that are coming into conflict. And I think this is worth discussing, and we're going to be discussing it in the form of I don't know whether it's a controversy yet, but it's certainly being presented as one by the media, of a black actress playing Anne Boleyn in a period drama about the life of Henry VIII's wife, second wife, I believe, and why this is relevant and what this actually reveals in the underlying problem in the way that we think about these things. So the first thing I guess we'll do is just, who's Anne Boleyn? Anne Boleyn was the daughter of a Norman aristocrat called Thomas Boleyn, the Earl of Wiltshire, the first Earl of Wiltshire, and Lady Elizabeth Howard. She was born in Norfolk, grew up in Hever Castle in Kent, lived a life of high politics until she married Henry VIII in 1533. Contemporary stuff, you can see. She was struggling, as did many of in fact, all of Henry's wives, I believe, struggled to give him a son, ended up miscarrying one. Henry, not thinking he's going to get a son out of her. I mean, he's only married to her for 3 years, so it's not like he spent a long time trying, but decided that he was going to claim to have been seduced into the marriage, had her charged with adultery, incest, and treason, and had her executed on the 19th of May in 1536. Tragic life story. I mean, no, I'm not commenting or going into depth or any of this. But the point is, we actually know exactly what Anne Boleyn looked like. Don't know if we have a picture of it handy, but we know exactly what Anne Boleyn looked like because of the contemporary portraits at the time. And so, why is it that this is a problem? Well, you get modern, like an outlet like the Metro, as a left-wing outlet, will say that she's being portrayed in a, quote, convention-challenging drama that features an actress who doesn't look like her, an actress called Jodie Turner-Smith, who I don't know anything about, I've never seen, but this isn't a commentary on her either, because the question really is, if we know so much about Anne Boleyn, and we know exactly what she looked like, exactly the clothes she wore, the way she styled her hair, the dresses she had, the necklaces she had, the pearls and jewelry that she had, why is this important to represent accurately in a period drama? And really it comes down to the purpose of what a period drama is and the intent behind what's happening. But as Metro say, the story is going to be told from a new perspective. The show is pushing boundaries by casting Jodie, who is black, as Boleyn, who is white. However, Boleyn has been previously played by a non-white actress on the screen, with Merle Oberon playing her in a 1933 film called The Private Life of Henry VIII. Oberon hid her biracial identity, claiming she was from Australia and passed as white. And I guess we're back to racial profiling of people. But as you can see from the way that this is being portrayed by Metro, a left-wing outlet, they believe that this is very progressive, convention challenging. But if you're doing a period drama, what's the point of a convention? Well, the convention is there to make you feel as if you are watching the events unfold were you to be an observer in the 16th century and not someone who's sat on their couch watching TV. It's to present the air of the majesty, the magic of having delved into this thing. But as we can see from the Sun's reporting on this, Tudor Fury, Jodie Turner-Smith pictured as Anne Boleyn for the first time after new Channel 5 drama sparked a race row. And if we can just go down a little bit so we can see some of the pictures, as you can see, there is the actress in the costume. And it's not just her either. There are other actors during that have been pictured in the casting who are also, not of European descent, and so would look remarkably out of place in 16th century England. And again, I personally don't care about someone's race or anything like that, but I am interested in the discussion that we're having around it. Because what the Sun have done is essentially taken sides of the debate and presented them, so we can make up our own minds, incidentally. And I thought it might be worth representing some of these, so we can explore the underlying ideas that are being played out here. So one Twitter user wrote, Anne Boleyn was white. A white person should not be picked to play a well-known historical black person. It would be classed as whitewashing. The same applies the other way around, in my opinion. That's certainly one perspective, and at least it is a logically consistent perspective. If the race of the person being portrayed is relevant to the aesthetic of the time period and the authenticity of the thing that you are representing, then it does make sense that white people shouldn't be playing black people on screen, and it does make sense that therefore black people shouldn't be playing white people on screen because it's not authentic. And there are other arguments we'll get into, but that's a perfectly coherent argument that's fair on both sides. Another person tweeted, Anne Boleyn, second wife of Henry VIII, were both white. If a white woman was cast to play Rosa Parks, there would rightly be outrage. Similarly with this casting, it's not acceptable. And again, it's the same logic as before, and it's really quite hard to argue with. I mean, if you're going to create a period drama about the life of Rosa Parks, it would be weird if Rosa Parks was played by someone who wasn't a black person. And it's because race is such an integral question to the story of Rosa Parks that this would be the case. But then the culture of England and the people that they are trying to represent in the case of Anne Boleyn and in the case of Henry VIII is also relevant because, again, it's a particular time and place that had particular, I guess we'll just call them aesthetic dimensions. And these things, if you're trying to create a period drama, are surely what you are trying to represent. If this is a period drama, why no appropriate concern given to casting actors who would resemble people of the period? That's a good question, isn't it? Why wouldn't there be? And the thing is, as soon as you start saying, well, some of these period issues don't matter, like let's say that the race just doesn't matter, well, then why does any of it matter? If, for example, the race doesn't matter and the look of the people doesn't matter, why do the clothes that they're wearing matter? Why should anything about it be period appropriate? Why shouldn't Anne Boleyn go to the electric chair instead of having her head cut off? Why should she even be wearing, period appropriate clothes? Why even have her played by a woman? What difference does any of this make if none of the normal concerns about creating a period drama apply? Others disagreed with the view, one saying, what difference does it make to her story if she's played by a black actress? I'll tell you, absolutely none. I don't want to sound prejudicial, but I'm going to suspect that person wasn't someone who otherwise supports Black Lives Matter, because being black actually does make a difference to the individuals who are saying, hey, this is making a difference to our lives. Now, I'm not making a judgment about the claims of Black Lives Matter or anything like that, but the point is, their claims are founded on the concept that there is a difference in the way that races are treated in society. And so if it doesn't make any difference, if there is no difference in the perceptual arena, and this applies over to the period drama, then she's negated all of the racial claims that have been made by Black Lives Matter and other such activist groups, identitarian activist groups. I don't think they would agree with that. And I suspect that the person, judging from the tone of the reply, I suspect this person isn't trying to negate racial claims. What she's trying to do is make sure that racism isn't being perpetuated. But I don't think that what we're dealing with here is a concern about racism. I think, as I said at the beginning, I think it's a concern about authenticity and a kind of properness. But I'll talk about that in a bit. So another tweeted, Anne Boleyn doesn't need to be white. Just in her paintings, she was portrayed as white. Being white has nothing to do with her at all. Well, sure, like in real life, if we're going to be making choices about the people we hang out with or the people we employ or, where we're going to shop and stuff like this, I agree. Race doesn't really have any particular relevance at all. And in many ways, it's illegal to be openly discriminatory on race. So this I agree with that in normal circumstances, in general. But when you are trying to represent a particular period of time in a particular place with particular people that you can name and you know a lot about, it does seem kind of relevant for the aesthetic effect of bringing the reader into the time and place that you're trying to the viewer, into the time and place that you're trying to recreate. And this is a particular philosophical position. And so I suppose we'll move on to now what is a rebuttal, or a kind of, no, it's not a rebuttal. It is in some ways a defense, but not a brilliant one, that I just found in a Reader's Digest article from September 2020, but it is relevant. So they say a popular defense is to say, well, an actor's job is to play a variety of roles that are far removed from who they are, so why should playing a character of a different race be off limits? And they quote from a Vox article from Allegra Frank, who says, philosophically, anyone should be able to play anyone, sure, but the truth is, Hollywood clearly doesn't subscribe to that idea on a broad basis. Instead, it's white people who can seemingly play anyone. I'm not exactly sure. Like, I mean, I suppose if we therefore said, well, black people can play anyone, then it would be fine to have white actors playing non-white roles, as long as we have it so it's black actors playing non-black roles. I don't know why Hollywood would have a problem with this. Hollywood seems like a very progressive place, but philosophically, anyone should be able to play anyone. I have to say I really disagree with that. I don't really think that... I mean, Henry VIII, I've been to the Royal Armoury and seen Henry VIII's armour. Henry VIII was a very strapping lad, and if he was played by someone who didn't even break 5 foot, then my suspension of disbelief would be very severely broken. And I wouldn't find this to be a particularly compelling or realistic period drama about the life of Henry VIII. And that is not prejudicial, I don't think. I don't think it's hateful. You certainly couldn't call it racist. I mean, heightist, maybe, if that's the case. But this is just a fact about the historical Henry VIII that surely you are trying to replicate. And if you're not replicating that, the question is kind of why? What's the intent behind it? Because if the intent is to create a good period drama that replicates as accurately as possible and tells the story, and otherwise untold stories, because it's not like Anne Boleyn got a fair hearing in her own time, so I can completely see the impetus to give her a fair hearing now, especially she doesn't seem to have really done anything wrong. So it's... the intent there is at least a fairly noble intent. But if you're not trying to portray these things accurately, why are you doing it? And why do anything at all? And what's interesting about this is they link in to this J.K. Rowling and a controversy where in 2016, a West End production of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child revealed a double standard. Hermione was played by a black actress in this, and this was something that got the internet upset because Hermione in the books, according to people who've read Harry Potter, I haven't read Harry Potter, it's not my generation, but apparently Hermione is described not explicitly as being a white European, but having a pale face, which I guess people have taken to be white European, especially given how Harry Potter is very much based in Britishness, and so you would expect them to be white people. But J.K. Rowling took to Twitter in response to this. She said, "I had a bunch of racists telling me that because Hermione turned white, that is, lost colour in her face after a shock, that she must be a white person or a white woman, which I have a great deal of difficulty with, but I decided not to get too agitated about it and simply state quite firmly that Hermione can be a black woman with my absolute blessing and enthusiasm." That's fine. She's saying that there's no essential characteristic about Hermione in regards to at least one aspect of her physical person, which is in this case her race. But the thing is, this rather undermines J.K. Rowling's own position regarding sex. In 2019, I believe it was, she tweeted this. She got into a big row with transgender activists on Twitter, as usual, where she had come to the conclusion that, in fact, to be a woman required an essential characteristic, which was to be female. And she reasons it like this. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. She expands on that, but it's not really that relevant because she's just covering her rear about being hateful towards trans people. But what she's saying is that if sex isn't an essential element in being a woman, then the reality of women globally is erased. And how is that not true also about race? If you would say that being white or being black or whatever it is, the way you look, isn't an essential characteristic to the person that you are, how can Black Lives Matter ever say that they are being oppressed because they are black? I mean, at the end of the day, just become white, I guess, would be the logic that would be implied by the logic. And so this puts her in a particular bind, where if we apply the same logic to her, to gender and sex that we would to race, then, I mean, being black requires the essential characteristic of having black skin in the same way that being a woman requires the essential characteristic of being female. So by her own logic, she's either being a hypocrite, which is totally possible, or she's rather confused about the things she's thinking, or she's come around to a position that is much more essentialist when it comes to any of these things. But really, if philosophically anyone should be able to play anything, then why would we appeal to any of these essential characteristics at all, like I was saying about anything about a period drama. I mean, it seems that we have properly ended the concept of a period drama at this point, as nothing about it is actually essential or it represents the period of time in question. Why even bother to tell the same story if none of this is essential to what you're doing? And so everything really boils down to purely a question of intent rather than the action or the consequence. And I think that that is actually going to provide a deeply unsatisfactory answer to not only the people who wish to enjoy a period drama and, you know, get a view into the life of the 16th century English monarchs, in the same way that, I mean, if I was watching a period drama about the Zulus, I would expect them to all look like they came from Africa. And if I found that it was, you know, I don't know, anyone from anywhere, a bunch of South Americans playing Zulus, it would rather take me out of the experience because my suspension of disbelief would be broken. It would be a bit strange. But I don't think that's prejudicial or hateful. I think that's just about your expectations regarding the aesthetic qualities of the thing that you're trying to represent. And not only that, if it is all about a question of intent, why isn't the intent of producing this period drama about representing the period accurately? Because if it was about intent, then you would have an accurate representation of the period if that was the intent behind it, because what would be the reason to not do that? It would surely be just practical constraints. And I think that you could probably find an actress who looks relatively similar to Anne Boleyn in England. So what is the intent behind it? And it seems to be that there is in fact a political and philosophical attempt that is behind the act of casting a non-white woman to play a white woman, that is something that is just never adequately addressed. But it's either that or the essential characteristics matter, as J.K. Rowling believes with sex and women, and there's nothing wrong with being concerned about period relevant aesthetic factors. But I doubt any of this will hit Twitter the way that I'm describing it. But I think this is really the concern that underlie it. And I'm actually going to write a piece for lotuseaters.com, which you can visit and subscribe to, about this kind of authenticity. Because I think it does need a bit more careful examination rather than me just talking off the top of my head in this video. But I'll publish that probably in the next few days on lotuseaters.com to try and make my thoughts a bit more clear and tangible. Because I really do think this is an issue that needs to be discussed, and the reasons that are underlying all of this really need to come to light.